Hey guys, what is up? I thought since I got quite a few requests that I would give you a little simulator tour showing you my racing rig and some of the hardware components. So here it goes. Starting with the most obvious, the sim rig itself. What you see here is a SimXperience Stage 4 simulator. It's built from tube steel with a powder coated finish. It is super rigid and it also weighs a ton. I moved it once when I moved into this apartment. That was a piece of work, and I hope I don't have to do that again anytime soon. But I haven't had any problems with it since I got it over 5 years ago. The guys at SimXperience actually made me a good deal back then when I got it. During that time I was working for Simmin, and we were improving our support for motion platforms and other hardware depending on shared memory. Now, it is a so-called seat mover, which means that, and I'm quoting the SimXperience website here, it's based on principles that manipulate your inner ear to create a sense of motion, combined with body pressure cues and muscle pressure manipulation. It is designed to optimize the principles of kinesthesia and proprioception, to fool your brain into perceiving these effects in an immersive manner. Now I know what you're thinking, it seems wrong that the wheel and so on isn't moving with the seat. But trust me, it works really well. You just need to understand that the point is not to simulate real G-forces, but rather fool the brain by manipulating your sense of balance. It also works like a full body force feedback, where you can feel all the bumps in the track, elevation changes, and all the things the car is doing underneath you, like when the rear steps out and you're going into a slide. It really adds to the sensation of what the car is doing on track. So, how is this achieved? We have 3 degrees of freedom with the simulator: roll, pitch, and yaw. And for that we have these 2 actuators in the back that move the seat, plus the traction loss module down there that moves the entire rig when you oversteer the car. And we have this control box right here that connects everything. The rear actuators are mounted onto this dampening bar, which helps make the motion more fluid. As you can see, there's also mounting options for speakers, but I'm mostly using headphones anyway when driving. The sim even came with a mountable cup holder, which I think is quite funny. On this side over here we have a keyboard arm, and on the other side a mount for your shifter, which is also quite adjustable. You can move it on either side, left or right. Works really well. Down there's a small place to put your mouse. The wheel sits on this telescoping steering wheel mount, which you can move in and out to fit your optimal position. What I did here, and this is sort of an improvised solution, is I put this plane on top of the steering mount, which is actually one of the blinds that came with the simulator, so I could mount my second shifter over here that I'm also using as the handbrake. The pedals down there are hard mounted on this adjustable platform that you can also move to the front or back depending on your size. The seat itself is a Recaro racing seat. I believe it's called Pole Position SPG. It's very comfy, FIA approved as you can see. I actually got this from Henrik Roos, who used to be our boss at Simbin, and is also a former FIA GT driver. He drove his Viper in the Spa 24 hours and so on, which is pretty cool. Moving on. The steering wheel is a Thrustmaster TS-PC Racer, which I recently upgraded to. I think it's a great wheel. It has a fair amount of torque and is much more silent than the G27 I've been using for a long time. And you can also swap rims quite easily. It's not an actual quick release, but it takes like 1 minute to mount a different rim, which is okay with me. Speaking of rims, the TS-PC Racer comes with this Formula type rim, which looks pretty neat. Actually, also a lot of modern GT cars now tend to use this type of rims, not just Formula cars, so it's definitely a great option to have. As you can see, I did some cosmetic modifications to it. I flipped around this plate on top that had the Thrustmaster logo on it. I've added an OMP badge, which I just printed out on paper and placed underneath the rim. And I added this little track map as a little gimmick, just to add some authenticity. It has 6 buttons, a D-pad and a rotary selector. I've been using a modified G27 in the past that had no buttons on the rim whatsoever, which meant I had to find some alternative ways to activate things like DRS, pit limiter and so forth. Now I can do this the proper way by operating the buttons, which definitely makes life easier when you are in a hectic race. The other rim I have over here is a 599 XX Evo. It's a 30-inch Alcantara wheel. Feels great, made out of great materials, looks very authentic to me. Originally this was a Ferrari branded wheel, which I'm not a big fan of. Kinda breaks the immersion if you're not driving a Ferrari. So I put this OMP badge on it that I had left over, and I think it looks pretty sweet. Moving on to the shifters. We got two Thrustmaster TH8RS shifters here, one in sequential and the other in H-shift mode. I think the TH8RS gives you a very decent quality for its price. Obviously not the most high-end option, but it does a pretty good job. Especially when used with the H pattern. It has a convincing feel with a nice positive click when putting the gear into position. You can adjust the resistance by tightening a screw, which is accessible from the exterior. It has a tendency to loosen up a bit over time, but you can just tighten it again every once in a while. In sequential mode, I have to say that it doesn't feel quite as good. There's not much of a mechanical feel to it, but it's doing its job. I'm mostly using it as a handbrake anyway, when driving dirt or WC7. I know you can also use it as an analog handbrake by moving the shifter plate in a vertical position, but there's much too little resistance in it to make it feel convincing that way. So I just keep it in sequential mode, and that is fine with me. Now, since I previously owned a G27, I decided to keep the pedals, which I think, out of all the lower to mid-tier options, are still some of the best. And I'm just so used to them that I'd like to avoid changing pedals, as long as these are still working. The pedals are connected to the PC via Ortner adapter, which makes them a standalone USB device. I know, compared to the rest of the simulator, it seems a bit silly to use G27 pedals, but hey, they work for me. I will probably end up replacing them with something else eventually. The monitor is a 40-inch Samsung LCD TV. It's quite an old model, I got it over 5 years ago. It's just your regular 1080p 60Hz display, but it works fine. I've never been the biggest fan of triple screens, because I think it's just too much hassle, and between the performance loss and the bezels interrupting your field of view, I just don't think you gain much from it. But that's just my opinion. The TV is mounted on this construction I built myself using these aluminum profiles, which are a great material to work with. It was a pretty straightforward process putting this together, and it's also very sturdy. Obviously the goal was to place the monitor in just the right position to create a realistic point of view, where the in-game cockpit lines up perfectly with the steering wheel just in front of it. I think that is one of the most important things when building a simulator, as it's really helping with the immersion when you sit in it and everything lines up just like it would in a real race car. You can go check out some of my POV videos to see how it looks from a driver's perspective. The PC we have standing over here is an i7 7700K with a 1080 Ti and 16 gigs of RAM. It does a very good job running all the sims and also streaming in 1080p 60 FPS. Up here on this tripod we have a webcam I use for my streams. It's a Logitech C922. I chose this one because it can do 60 FPS at 720p, which is of course nice. The headset I'm using is a Steelseries Siberia V2. It's nothing special, but it has a pretty good sound quality and a decent microphone. It's also very lightweight, which is great when wearing it for extended periods of time. The gloves I'm using are Sparco kart gloves, Sparco Arrow K-7 to be precise. They are a size 10 or medium, which is a pretty tight fit. They have a nice rubber grip on the inside. I quite like how they feel. They cost around 60 euros, which is relatively cheap I think. Last but not least, in case you're wondering, the lights you see here are part of a Philips Hue setup with a LED strip down there. I can change the colors with an app on my phone, which is pretty cool. And that's pretty much it. Finally, I just want to say that of course you don't need all this hardware to enjoy sim racing, and certainly more expensive hardware will not make you a better driver. I also didn't go out and buy all of this in one day. I've accumulated it over many years I spent with this hobby. The most important thing is to have fun, no matter what hardware you have. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, leave a like and subscribe for more sim racing content. Thanks for watching, see you in the next one. Bye.
Left 9, tighten 6, into right 3, don't cut, 70. Right 4, tighten, keep in, into left 3, don't cut,